Yeah, it's not really us right here. Trying something different on the music tonight. I'm not really sure how comfortable I am with it. I'm feeling a little awkward. But secretly, when nobody's looking, like I kind of get down to stuff like this. I kind of mess with stuff like this. Only when nobody's watching. And now I just did it when everybody's watching. So, secret's out. All right, that's enough of that. Felt real weird. We don't start with that kind of music on this channel, but hey, what's going on? Welcome back to Your Lake Fork Guy. We're gonna do something different this week. We're gonna do some live streams. Tonight we're talking about all about tournament fishing. We had a huge, one of the biggest tournaments of the year at Lake Fork Saturday and Sunday. Skeeter Owners Tournament put on by Bass Champs. We're gonna talk about that, break down what went on there. And of course, there's been professional tournament fishing going on with Bass Pro Tour at the top level. There's been another Bassmaster event since we talked, and wouldn't you know it, there's been more rules discussion. There's been more. They can't stop cheating, guys. These suckers are just, there's always some type of rules violation or this, that, and the other going on. There's a lot to unpack there and talk about. We're going to get into all of it, man. It's, they got to start doing something with these rules. They got to start having written consequences for rule violations. That way it's black and white what the punishment is for these rule violations. We'll break down exactly everything's been going on because a lot of it's being just kind of swept under the rug. And as usual, it's not isolated to one of our pro tours or the other. They are both guilty of these types of things. So it is what it is. We'll discuss that. Before we get into that, I always like to say hello and how you do. Can I vent? Can I vent a little bit about YouTube? YouTube is irritating me tonight. YouTube, you're irritating me. For years, like years now, we've been going live on YouTube. And I put the thumbnail in there, then I flip the phone and it turns my camera sideways. As you guys can see, the camera's not sideways tonight, we're vertical. Problem with that is I got this big charging port that's stuck in the bottom while we're live to make sure that this camera stays charged. And I'm having to like balance it. So at any moment, this whole live stream could go off kilter when the camera just falls over. Like that could happen at any moment tonight. So we have impending disaster. But now when I turn it, it like won't turn my screen the right way. It's so weird. Let's see what happens. Nope. Locked during live stream. Can't even try that. I got something popping up here that says learn more. I don't even know what this is about. I just want to see the chat. I don't want that. Where's my chat at? Live chat. It says all messages are visible, but I'm not seeing any messages. And I always see chat. There's so many, like I'm having issues with YouTube tonight, guys. I just needed to vent about that with you. I, for whatever reason, cannot see your comments. You guys drop the comments in. Hopefully, I will be able to see it here in a little while. Yeah, I'm very frustrated right now. Okay, so that's going on. That's what's going on with that. Your boy's irritated, so we'll try not to be too angry. Let's get into the Skeeter Owners Tournament. Actually, hold on one second before we do that. Before we do that, let me see if I can pull this up and see the chat on here so I can reply to you guys' comments because I like to acknowledge you guys for joining us when we do this. Of course, we got to wait for the ad, of course. Hey, I got chat. There we go. Awesome, man. So thank you guys for joining us. Looks like we've had a few comments so far. Not a whole heck of a lot, but let's get into that. Let's say some hellos and how you doing. So Rocky Shoe, Eagles 20, John, Casey Walls, Chris Toffer, Curtis. That's a lot of stuff going on there. 6 Mile, OJC's in the house. Brandon Caldwell, Sean Andre, Fiend Fishing, Gary Freemiller, Casey Wells, Gary Payne, Melton Horner, and Fishing with JC. Man, thank you guys so much for joining us. Scott McDowell just joined us. Thank all of y'all for joining us as you always do. I appreciate it. There's more than one way to skin a cat. I can see the chat on this phone. Look, it's me watching me. How weird is that? I just realized how much I had my head down for how long there. So sorry about that. All right. Any announcements that we need to do? We got our big tournament coming up that we do every year, our big charity event, man. Listen, I know the economy's tight. I see that the traffic on general days, not tournament days, but on general days, the traffic at the lake's been down. I hear the other guys talking about how the trips a little bit thinner later in the summer than they have been in past as far as the bookings in advance. Man, it's I understand what's going on, but you know what, man? Our veterans and first responders, no matter how screwed up it gets, they've done a lot to provide us a hell of a lot of opportunities in this country. And on June 1st and June 30th and July 1st, we have our Forever Grateful tournament. It's named Forever Grateful because we are forever grateful to those types of people. It benefits an organization known as One Tribe Foundation. It is a nonprofit. It directly benefits all first responders and veterans in a big, big way. So we're very proud to be associated with that organization. They do a great job, and it's a fun event. Number one, even if you don't have money, come to the event, because on Friday night at registration, it's a straight up party. Like, we have a concert going on, everybody's hanging out. We auction off some items that got donated during the concert. Like, in between songs, we'll auction an item off here and there. It gets a little loose, it gets a little weird out there, it gets a little crazy, but it is an absolute blast. It is a huge, very patriotic, very all for one for all type of atmosphere, and it is a dadgum your Lake Fork guys style party, man. We get down with the get down at that deal. So even if you can't donate, just come hang out with us, man. Just be there to be part of the event. It's a good time, and that'll be on Friday, June 30th, that evening when we do that registration. Then on Saturday, July 1st, we have an open team tournament. Anybody can enter this. It's open to all. And it is a $100 entry fee with a $20 optional big bass pot. Most people do the big bass pot as well, of course. So $120 all in for both. And a team tournament, and it is 70% payback, so you can actually win some money. 30% of the revenue from the tournament registration fees goes to the organization. 100% of all the auction money goes to the organization. And 70% gets paid back to you guys. So there is some payouts that go on in the event. But it's just a great time. And then we're adding something new. We're adding a little new flavor this year. So Saturday night, after the tournament is over, Lake Fork Marina has a new venue that they have created, or they bought a building and have remodeled it into a venue hosting site. And we are going to host a poker tournament, a Texas Hold'em poker tournament. And what we're going to do is we're going to auction off the seats. There's going to be 16 seats. I know myself and Cody Mays are going to occupy 2 of those seats. So there's going to be 12 to 14 seats that you guys can actually bid on and purchase these seats. 50% of that money is going to the organization. 50% of that money will be in the pot. I got to make sure legality, we're clear on that, but that is the plan, to do that as such. On Saturday night after the event, hang out in the air conditioning because you've been outside hot all day. Have a good time, have a drink, whatever, play some Texas Hold'em, maybe win some money. But either way, have a great time raising money for a great cause. A lot going on, as you can see. Now, let's get into Lake Fork. Lake Fork at the Skeeter Owners Tournament, Bass Champs did what Bass Champs does. For my money, Bass Champs puts on the best team tournament events of everybody. I mean, and this Owners Tournament, like the Skeeter Owners Tournament, is the best bass boat owners tournament there is. I mean, you sign up, pay your entry fee, and they give you your value and entry fee plus in a goodie bag with like stuff that they give you for free when you sign up. You basically have got all your money back in merchandise as soon as you sign up. Then on top of that, the payouts are pretty good in that event. It's an hourly big bass event, and it's just such a great time. Everybody always has great things to say about the Skeeter Owners Tournament. This year was no exception. Bass Champs just does such a great job. Chad Potts and all the guys over there, man, they do the best job in the business of hosting a team tournament for the weekend angler. They really do. So makes you feel like a big time pro when you're over there fishing with Bass Champs. It really does. So good job to those guys. The lake fished well. There was 12 overs brought in. Now that's not the best Lake Fork's fish in the Owners Tournament. I think one year they had 32 or 35 or something like that overs brought in. It's a day and a half of fishing. It's a full day on Saturday, 7 or 8 weigh-in hours, and then on Sunday they go till noon. So a day and a half of fishing, 12 overs brought in. That's about an over an hour on average. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. That's not bad. If you think about what an over is, over the slot 24-inch fish, man, that is a big dadgum fish. I've caught 10-pounders that would not measure 24 inches. So, 24-inch fish is a big old frame fish for sure. So the lake's fishing good, and I didn't get out there to talk to guys and see how they were catching them, but I bet you there was some caught deep. I know there was some caught deep because that's what most everybody's doing. But I bet you there was some caught shallow too. The lake has just been fishing really good. I will say the shallow water bite got kind of monkeyed up with that big rain we had Saturday afternoon, kind of dirtied up some of the backwater areas where those fish were hanging out. But man, we're getting more and more of those fish offshore. We're really starting to get to a point where there's some more of those fish offshore, and that's becoming a more reliable pattern than it has been. It was kind of hit or miss for a while. So that's what's going on with Lake Fork. Great job, Bass Champs, and congratulations to, I can't remember the guy's name, gentleman from Louisiana that won it. Can't remember his name off the top of my head. Anyway, great job. Now, let's talk about what y'all came here for if you looked at the thumbnail, right? The cheating that's going on. First of all, there was a video that went around somewhere about Keith Poche, and I don't even know when this video was taken. I don't know if this was at the Cayuga event this last week. I don't know if this was an old video or whatever, but Keith Poche he was plucking a jig over a fence, and like literally right over his left shoulder, you could see like no fishing, do not cast, something like that. It was kind of funny. But who knows how that jig, like there was no context to the video. Who knows how the jig got there? If, you know, it's, what did Keith Poche do now? Well, apparently he threw his jig over an area that you weren't, or at least that's what it was made to look like. Now that, you know, I defended Keith on the pond dam jumping thing because, you know, that's been a part of bass fishing forever and always been celebrated when the right people do it. But now all of a sudden when Keith Poche does it, it's an issue. And I still think that was a terrible, terrible decision to disqualify him in that event. If he really threw his jig, and I don't know the context, and that's why I say it posted with that. If he really threw his jig over there when there's a sign that literally says don't throw it in there, right there on the fence, and you threw it over, that's about as bad and blatant as it gets. But the real cheating that I want to talk about is MLF, Bass Pro Tour. You got guys sight fishing for smallmouth. They're weighing best five, so they got to call up. They're counting their best five fish, not every fish. You had guys pretty clearly and obviously catching the same fish multiple times. If you know anything about bed fishing, you get one that's hot and ready, you can catch it 3 or 4 times in a day if you want. They were obviously catching the same fish. And at one point, here's what the issue is. Like, you could make the argument that, well, it's the way they weigh them in the boat. There's no rules against it. Okay, I'm with you. Takahiro Amori catches a 5-pounder or 4-pounder, whatever it was, weighs it, lets it go, and literally says, I think I might be able to catch that fish again. And he turns around to the official and goes, hey, there's no rule against, like, I can catch the same fish again, right? And the rules official that's in the boat, the guy that's supposed to be upholding the rules, tells him, no, you can't catch the same fish. If you know it's the same fish, you cannot catch it twice. And I remember discussing this with somebody when they were at Lake Fork, and there was a lot of guys sight fishing in 2020, right when COVID broke out. I asked that question and brought that question up, and that's the same thing I was told then, is if you're aware that it's the same fish, like if it's a bed fish and you can see it, you know that's the same fish you just caught, you can't catch it again. How on earth is that many guys catching the same fish? Like, there was quite a bit of it that went on, a good amount. Multiple guys on the Bass Pro Tour are intentionally breaking that rule. Or they're trying to pull the old, you know, proverbial whatever over your eyes and say, well, you know, their only argument they're going to have is, well, I didn't know that was the same fish. There was 2 fish. That could have been a new fish that pulled in on that bed, bro. Like, really? These guys at the top level are just, here's what I'm seeing, and here's what I'm thinking. We are just starting to see what has always gone on. Because we've only had live coverage for a little while, right? So how many times, we've already had multiple accusations of people snagging fish off beds. We've had multiple fishing in off limits incidents. I think it's just now that we have live coverage, we're just seeing how much we lack integrity in the sport on some level, and we need to fix that. Now everything's exposed. It's just like social media. People say social media is messing up the world. Social media ain't messing up nothing. It's just showing you what's really out there. Like, you just are seeing a reflection. Social media is basically a mirror for the world. You're seeing everything that's out there more than you ever have, on a level that we've never seen before. People have always been messed up. If you believe in that good book, it'll tell you there's some monkeyed up people way back then. Go back and read some of them stories. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's some weird stuff going on back in them days. So I think we're just seeing more of it. And now with live coverage and bass fishing, same deal, right? Same deal. We're seeing how much integrity we lack. And the only way to keep that in check is to have written, established, hard line, clear as day punishments for rule violations. Each rule violation needs a set punishment for it. Now, you can throw a blanket over most of the rules and give, this group of rules, this punishment, this group of rules, that punishment. I get it. There's a difference between forgetting to buckle your life jacket and catching the same fish off a bed twice on purpose. There's a difference in that. Like 100%, there's a difference in that. This needs to be a situation on this bedfish deal where when a guy rolls up to a bed, like we've gotten to the point where now with live coverage, that guy better tell you on way in the boat format where you could catch them twice, that guy needs to tell you how many fish he sees on that bed. He needs to tell you there's one fish on that bed. There's two fish on that bed. Like, he's got to establish that when he gets to that bed. And if he's fishing and he says there's one fish there and another one pulls up, when it pulls up, he needs to tell somebody. He needs to turn around and tell his rules official that information. We cannot, this is going to be bad for the sport and deteriorate the sport if we continue to allow these things to go unchecked. When the owner, Boyd Duckett, gives himself a 10-minute penalty for fishing Guntersville during the off limits, tells the story of corruption. See, okay, again, without context, that was stupid. Like, that was really dumb of Boyd to do that. Like, it was really dumb, and I think he would tell you it was dumb. But do you understand what actually happened there? Like, he didn't, from what I heard, now, all of this is just hearsay. I'm just going off what I heard. From what I heard, he didn't even get in a boat. He went down and took his grandkids crappie fishing on his boat dock because he lives on Guntersville. Yes, he broke the rule. He casted a line in the water during off-limits time when he wasn't supposed to be on the water. But he did not go out looking for bass. There was no gain to him. He gained no advantage in that tournament on that rule. That's what I mean. These rules have got to be clear. So and here's the other thing, though. If the rule was written, if you cast a line in the water during off limits, you are disqualified from that tournament. Then we wouldn't have a debate. Boyd would have to disqualify himself, no matter how frivolous or stupid or innocent the breaking the rule was. Once he broke the rule, he would have to answer for it. But we don't have that. We have these generic, like in Major League Fishing's rules, it's something along the lines of, if it's found to be accidental, then there's a 10-minute delay on your, and that was what they ruled, that this was accidental, and it was a 10-minute delay. There's 3 different levels of rule violations, but all of them are open to interpretation. All of them depend on a guy or a small group of guys deciding how bad the rule was. And anytime you do that, when it's the guy that owns the show, he runs it and helps them get paid, those people are probably going to have a little different judgment on him than they would Dakota Ebert. Which he's kind of one of their golden children now, so they probably let him have some slack. But you know what I'm saying, like one of their lesser dans, one of their guys that's a little more irrelevant on the tour, they're not going to judge him the same as they're going to judge Boyd Duckett or Jacob Wheeler, for that matter, or any of those big-name guys. That's just human nature, man. You can't stop that. Can't stop that. I mean, that one didn't bother me near as much as the sight fishing deal. And that, because I think anybody with a realistic point of view can see that if he was really just taking his kids crappie fishing on his dock, if that's the real story, like, there's grandkids, that's not like, he's not getting an advantage in the tournament. However, catching the same 5-pound smallmouth off a bed is very unethical. And when you have a weight, catch, weight, release format, you've got to police that. How could you not see that coming? I saw it coming 3 years ago when they were on Lake Fork, the first year of the Bass Pro Tour, when I was like, hey man, like I know what I would do. Like I could just sit there and catch the same 5-pounder over and over again, rack up some weight. Like they know they had to seen this coming, man. And it's probably been done before. We just ain't never paid enough attention to notice it. Like, come on, man. Come on. That was awful. Awful right there. Shameful. Yeah, there's been rumors. So M. Jones says, I realize that, talking about Boy Duckett, but it's just another case in BPT. How about Wheeler and the Ding crew being fined $5,000 multiple times a year for sharing information and you never hear of it? He says, I know a guy who films. So I just don't know enough about that to respond to it. I don't. I know that sharing information and getting information against the rules happens. I know it happens. I can personally tell you this. I've talked with Jacob Wheeler multiple times. I have even asked Jacob Wheeler to do podcasts with me, like live streams with me, before leading up to a Lake Fork event. Jacob Wheeler would not even do a podcast with me before a Lake Fork event because he did not want to, he didn't want to give anybody any reason to question whether or not he got information from me. He was very adamant about that. I'm also aware of the information rules, so I'm very conscious about what I say to those guys when I do talk to them. The only conversation me and Jacob Wheeler have ever had that wasn't in a text before a tournament was when his camera guy got in a bind and needed a ride from the airport. He called me and asked me if I could help him with that, and of course we did. And my buddy Zach lived right over there by the airport. Z-Dub went and picked his camera guy up one time. But he's been very aware of not discussing information with me. So my experience with Jacob Wheeler, and I've had conversations with other guys that are like, some of them will hint at things and kind of beat around the bush, try to get a little heads up from you on this, that, or the other. Some of them will straight up ask you. So there's differences in guys that are willing to break information rules. And my personal experience with Jacob Wheeler is he is not one of those guys. So for whatever he's been accused of or fined for or whatever, I don't know. But my personal experience is he does not violate that information rule. Doesn't mean he doesn't do it with people he knows better, because we don't know each other well by any means. Like, I'm not Jacob Wheeler's boy, nothing like that. Like, that's nothing like that at all. It's a very surface relationship, over the phone deal. Like, that's it. Like, so I'm not saying he doesn't do that. I have no idea whether he does or not, but from my experience, he doesn't do that. Not with me. Jared Carson says we look alike. He said he was wearing our tournament from our shirt from our tournament last year, from our charity tournament last year, which is a shirt I still wear occasionally. And I've worn it in some pictures here recently. And he said he was wearing that shirt and two people came up to him and tell him how they downloaded the Fish Life app. That's funny. We need more transparency in the sport. No doubt about it. They need more transparency in the sport. There's no doubt about it. And I saw a comment on here that said, too many rules. It would have to be, the rule book would be so big, so big. It doesn't have to be. You can put a group of rules, and if you violate this rule, here's the punishment. You put the one punishment at the top. You violate all these rules, that falls under this punishment right here. And you put another group of rules. All these rules fall under this punishment. And one punishment could be a fine, and one punishment could be disqualification. And if you do something bad enough, there could be like a year ban or whatever. Like, you could do it by categories of rules. You don't have to go and put a punishment by each and every rule. There's a way to streamline it and do it. I mean, don't tell me we can't, like, don't know how you would do it. Like, there's plenty of ways to go around it and do it, for sure. So M. Jones is now saying they share within the group and have failed multiple polygraph tests. I don't know about outside information. So sharing within the group of anglers, like on bass, that's not illegal at all. It used to be. Here's part of the problem too. That's another where they are not clear on the rules. It was against the rules for them to share within the group the first year or two of BPT. But they have rolled back those rules and regulations on sharing information from angler to angler. I believe they can discuss while they're still in the event. Now, once they've been cut, they can't discuss it. But during practice and while they're all still in the event, I think they're allowed to discuss some things. They are allowed to discuss and some things they aren't. I'm not really, again, there's just not a lot of clarification. It's on them. Like, they're the ones creating these muddy waters with all their interpretations of rules and vague rulings on things. Like, it just needs to be black and white, clear cut. You either violate the rule or you don't. Here's what qualifies as violating it. If you violate it, here's the punishment. It's got to be, we got to get there if we want to solve this, in my opinion. What else y'all want to talk about? There you go, M. Jones. That's correct. That's correct. Yeah. Yep. Well, that was my spill on the rules violations that I saw. Here's what bothers me so much, like, about the whole catching the same fish off the bed deal. Like, even if it wasn't written in the rule book, if it wasn't, and apparently it was, because the rules official said that you're not allowed to do that. And I was told that 3 years ago at Lake Fork, that if you're aware it's the same fish, you're not allowed to catch it twice in the same day, something like that. I think that's what I was told 3 years ago, is you're not allowed to catch the same fish twice in the same day if you're aware that that is the same fish. Even if it wasn't written in the rule book. Bass fishing tournaments have existed for a long time, and we've always had weigh-ins where there's no possibility of weighing in the same fish twice in the same day. You know it's wrong. Like, even if it wasn't against the rules, you know it's wrong. I don't pretend like bass fishing is going to solve that problem, because that's been a problem, you know, not being willing to do the right thing or being willing to cheat when others weren't looking. That's a problem as old as time. That's in man's sin nature. But as a man, I pride myself on trying to do the right thing for the right reasons, even if nobody's looking. That's the definition of integrity, is doing the right thing for the right reasons when nobody's looking. I pride myself on being that way. So when I see someone clearly not doing that, it makes me not a big fan of that person. I mean, it is what it is. We all make mistakes, but it makes me think less of those people when I see them do that. So even if it wasn't in the rule book, come on, man. Like, that's not right. That's not the way to win. That's not the way to win. It's not. It's salty. Like, it's sorry. You're not doing right. Like, you got to feel greasy after that one. Greasy. Any Trailer Park Boys fans in the house? Let's talk about Rayburn. Yeah, let's talk about Rayburn. What do you want to talk about? That's a big topic. It's a big lake. I have no idea. I have not been to Rayburn this year, so I have no idea what's been going on down there for the most part. Tournaments? Okay. Kitty, I appreciate you watching and joining and hanging out with us tonight. You may watch every video I put out, and I'm sincerely grateful for that. But Kenny, with all due respect, I could not disagree with your comment anymore. Tournaments should not be scheduled when the bass are spawning. Why? Why? Like, why? Y'all do realize we don't have like population issues in these lakes. Like, there's plenty of bass in these lakes. And I'm assuming your argument for not scheduling tournaments while the bass are spawning is so they can reproduce without being disturbed, so that we can have more fish in our lakes. These big lakes don't have population issues. It's a big lake. You've got a locating fish issue if you're not finding them. Like, there's plenty of fish in every big lake. Like, there's some lakes that are more fertile than others and have more. Don't get me wrong. There is. East Texas has got a ton of fertility and has a ton of fish in it. Some of the lakes in other parts of the country don't have as many fish in it, or they don't grow as big. It's just you have certain amounts of fertility in the ecosystem of the water that's better in some areas than others. But having bass fishing tournaments during the spawn is not quantifiably detrimental to the population. You know how much of the fry survives? Period. According to a biologist that I discussed this with, fry survival rate is like 2%. 2%. You know how many eggs a 10-pounder lays? 10-pounder can lay up to around 50,000 eggs. 2% in optimum conditions are going to survive. So 98% of them, of those fry, are going to die anyway. Do you think if you take one female... By the way, do you know what pulling one female or male off a bed does to the fry? Do you even know what that does to them? What does it actually do to them? Because once the eggs are on the bed, and once the male is mixed in his stuff, the only thing they do is keep bluegill and turtles from eating fry when they hatch, or I guess maybe they eat eggs, but 98% of those are going to die anyway. So they're only killing 2% off that one bed. Do you know what the odds are when you're bed fishing of you pulling a fish off and there being nothing there to protect it, and it actually having a detrimental effect on those eggs? Even of the ones that you catch off beds, it's not like every single one of those 100% of the eggs die. No, you're still going to get a 0.5% or whatever, or a 1% or whatever it is of those eggs that survive anyway, once they've been laid. And if the eggs haven't been laid yet, you're really not hurting anything. So what is the issue with bringing fish to scales when the tournament's going on? Moreover, when you're talking about Bass Pro Tour, you're talking about catch, weight, release. If you don't think that a bass goes right back to that, I can't tell you how many times and I realize people don't know this because it blows guide customers' minds. We catch a fish off a bed, we get a good picture of it, we let it go, and before I can pick the power poles up and move on, the fish is back on the bed, sitting there, like you can flip at it again. It blows people's minds when that happens. When you're doing catch, weight, release, and they just catch them, weigh them in the boat, and then turn them loose, there's no chance you're hurting anything at all. None at all. No chance. Like, you're not hurting those beds at all. Those fish go right back to that bed. That's why those guys can catch them off them multiple times a day. They're still sitting there. They're still doing their spawning routine. They're still defensive over that spot. If those fish weren't defending the spot where the eggs are, or where the eggs are going to be, they couldn't catch those fish anyway. So, appreciate you. Thank you so much for watching. Could not disagree with you more on that comment, brother. Woo! Let's circle back to that. What is the name brand of that fold-up net that I have? I don't know. That is the one that comes in a new Skeeter boat. If you want to buy my boat, I'll give you the net in it because I'll get another one in my new boat. If you would like to buy my boat, I'll happily give you the net in it. By the way, my boat is for sale. If anybody's looking for a boat, I got a boat for sale for a good deal. $64,000 for a fully rigged 2021 Skeeter that is in great shape. And I mean live scope, 360, all that stuff. Kenny also says there's not much skill in catching off the bed. Brother, you need to go bed fishing with me on a pressure fishery one time. You come to Lake Fork and try to catch off fish off a bed and tell me there's no skill in it. And Man, like I said, I really don't think for one second I don't appreciate you hanging out with us and talking and chatting. And I appreciate you making these comments. I do. I just don't agree with them in this situation. Bed fishing is not easy. Like, it does take a lot of skill. A lot of skill. All right, 6 Mile Outdoors says we got some updates coming on the Fish Life app for Rayburn and Toledo. There's been some big changes on both the lakes. He said Rayburn was a madhouse last Saturday with ABA and United Reels. I bet it was. Rayburn gets pounded with tournaments. My gosh, it does. All right, somebody wanted my thoughts on the PGA Tour merger with LIV Golf. So there's been some similarities between the golf world and the fishing world, not in the purses, not in the money, that's for sure. But as far as how there was a split in the professional level tournaments, and on that one, the new LIV Tour, which I guess it's not LIV. Like Rory McIlroy, he's holding on to his gun. Well, he is sticking by his guns on this deal. Rory McIlroy's like, it is not LIV that just bought the PGA. It's the same group of people. They put a different name on the company, on the holding company. It's the same group of people. That'd be like if Bass Pro Tour came up with All World Fishing, AWF, and bought Bassmaster. It's not the Bass Pro Tour. Well, it's Boyd Duckett's running it though, right? Yeah, but it's not Bass Pro Tour. It's AWF, All World Fishing. Well, that's basically what's happened, right? And my thoughts on it are, I'm not even going to discuss the Saudi Arabia deal, like the Saudi Arabia connection. I'm not going to get into that because I will say things that, number one, I can't take back because they're on live video, and things that are very probably inappropriate to share. So I'm not even going to discuss the Saudi Arabia connection. You know, the reality of my situation is I've been to that part of the world in Iraq, and I have certain feelings about some of the cultural beliefs over there, and they're just not appropriate for me to share here. So we're not even going to get into that. But I think you can probably tell what my viewpoint is on that. As far as from a pure business standpoint, brilliant. I mean, brilliant. The Bass Pro Tour should have done exactly what they did. That's what they should have done. But Bass Pro Tour made some mistakes and let egos get involved and got into a ticky-tack. You know one thing you didn't see from LIV Golf? LIV Golf, you didn't. How much did LIV Golf talk about the PGA Tour? Not much at all. They went out and put their product out there, right, and did their thing and drew big crowds and paid these guys better than they've ever been paid before and created some loyalty that way. You don't think they got some loyalty from Dustin Johnson and Phil Mickelson and Pat Perez? You don't think those guys are all in on the LIV Golf deal with how much they paid them? Yeah, that'll create some loyalty in a heartbeat. Guess what, guys? If Coke pays a lot more than Pepsi and treats their employees way better and gives their employees more free time, better schedules, and pays them a lot more, everybody's going to want to work for Coke. Like it would be any industry, it would be the same way. So LIV Golf's taking over just doesn't surprise me, honestly, the way they did things the right way as far as the business standpoint goes. And I don't like the Saudi connection like a lot of people don't, but it is what it is, man. I got news for you. People with that kind of money, ain't none of them clean. Ain't none of them clean. Again, all these things that we discuss and debate when there's, questionable topics and you got questions that you don't really know the answers to, you can usually look back to that one book and get an answer for it. You go read that good book and it'll tell you about people that got all the money. None of them are clean. And that's never been more true than now. So you can gripe about the Saudi people and whatever else. The people that were rich enough to be the controlling authority and owners of the PGA Tour before it was sold, they got some bad stuff going on behind the scenes too. Guaranteed. So It just is what it is. That's about all the thoughts I have on LIV Golf and PGA Tour. I don't pay that much attention to all that stuff. But the dynamics of it were similar to fishing, so it did catch my attention as far as that goes. And I will tell you this, I do know from inside sources, that's what Major League Fishing wants to do. That's what they want to do. They want to buy bass and own all of it. They want to do that. That was their idea and their model. They just haven't executed on it yet. And Bass has fought back and built back, and, you know, seems like Bass is doing pretty well. I think both of them are still fighting each other, and both of them are still costing each other money and hurting each other on some level, for sure. And they will continue to, as long as they keep scheduling events on top of each other, that's for sure. They're definitely losing money there. I think there's a lot of nearsightedness with both organizations. They don't do a very good job of understanding and seeing the bigger picture very well. I think a prime example is the schedule decisions they made this year. If you look at the schedule decisions, both organizations, they're for-profit organizations, so they need to make money. And I think with what's going on, I think both organizations are financially strained a little bit. And from what I've heard from the inside, they are both financially strained. Regardless of what they tell you in public, like they are both struggling a little bit financially. So what they did with the schedule this year is pretty clear and obvious. And what makes it really clear and obvious to me is the Texas situation. When from both tours combined, Elite Series and Bass Pro Tour, there's one event between the two tours in Texas, and it's held at the Sabine River. That tells me exactly what you're doing. You are going to the place that will pay you to show up. And if you look at, it's really glaring on the Elite Series schedule. You look at their schedule, it's pretty clear and obvious. They're not going to these fisheries because it's going to produce the best product, the best television product, the best branding product. They're not picking the schedule because it's what's best for the viewing public. They're picking the schedule because they're going where places will pay them to compete, and they're arrogant enough to think that it doesn't matter whether they catch 100 pounds or 40 pounds, that the viewers will continue to watch them the same. It's similar to with bass. They also put a great deal of value and brag about their in-person interaction at their weigh-ins. I don't care how many people came to that Sabine River event. It's not nearly as important as the views online, and what used to be television views now are online views for the most part. That is where all the monetary gain is. If you want to actually build a big financial, huge business, you have to be focused on what's going to build the brand bigger and keep people coming back, and they are not. They are focused on right now. They're focused on a weigh-in versus their live coverage, because they don't give you real weights on the bass track. You have to. How many people actually watch weigh-ins? Only the hardcore fans are the only ones that actually watch weigh-ins. You're totally eliminating the scoreboard from the majority of the people that are going to watch, the casual fans. They're not going to watch that live stream. They're going to go back later and look, and they're going to be irritated that they didn't have the real score while the game was going on. If you want to make it a real sport and grow the brand and make it bigger, you got to do it like real sports do. That's my opinion on that. But this schedule deal, so they're going to make $100,000 or $500,000 or whatever they get for going to Sabine River. Whereas the brand building they've got from going to Lake Fork for the last few years and catching all those big fish is infinitely more valuable, and it's in perpetuity. That payment from Sabine River down there from Orange, Texas, that's a one-time payment. The brand loyalty and following that you build from catching 100-pound stringers over 4 days, that lasts in perpetuity. That should be much more important to you than a one-time payoff. You should be willing to sacrifice the one-time payoff to build the brand bigger. And it's pretty obvious at this point that it's right now. What can I get my hands on right now, instead of seeing the bigger picture? And that's what I mean by that. So, just my opinion. What do I know? I've never run a big, huge business like that, so. Sorry, trying to read comments and catch up. Bear with me, just catching up on comments. Somebody said, let's talk about snakes. We know I hate snakes. We know how much you love them. Say, God dang it. I am so irrationally scared of snakes, it's ridiculous. It just like literally I get like a guttural response when I see a snake. It's like a fear I can't control. Talking about cheating, somebody said, how about the under the slot's tail? How often have we caught them like that? Man, honestly, I don't know. I don't pay that much attention. I've seen a couple over the years that it's pretty obvious somebody trimmed their tail. So on Lake Fork, if you don't know, we've got a slot limit. So you got to catch a fish over 24 inches for a big bass tournament, or you got to catch one under 16 inches. So you can't keep anything between 16 and 24 inches. So people will catch one that's like 16 and 8, and they literally will pinch the tail and cut it. Like cut the end of the tail to make it short enough to measure. Game wardens are up to speed on it. There's game wardens at every one of these weigh-ins watching fish as they come across, and they're watching for that stuff. Like there's a game warden sitting there right there watching him measure fish, and they're watching for that kind of stuff. And the weighmaster that's measuring the fish, he's watching for that stuff. And I think the vast majority of those guys that do that get caught. But it has been something that's happened, and people have been caught doing it. And I've seen a fish or two over the years that have a shorter than normal looking tail. I think a lot of people see a fish that has tail rot where a piece of the tail's missing, and they think that, like I've heard people say somebody tried to trim that tail. No. Bass get infections, and sometimes pieces of their tail rots off. Like that happens. I mean, look at them every year when they spawn. The bottom part of their tail just goes, like a lot of them, literally their tail gets pieces missing of it from fanning a bed. So that tail is a very thin thing that can get torn up pretty easy. But it's not something I've seen a lot of that. But you got to think, when I catch a fish, especially when I catch a 2-pounder, I don't really even look at it. Like when I catch a 2-pounder, it's like off the hook. Oh, that's cool. Back in the water, usually about as fast. The only time I look at them is when we have a big tournament coming up, and I got somebody with me that's pre-fishing for that tournament. So we're looking for those specific size fish. That's the only time I even really look at fish that size closely at all. So I could have caught dozens of them and never noticed it by now, honestly. Is there going to be a guides tournament at our benefit tournament, our Forever Grateful tournament, that is July 1st, open team tournament? In the years past, we've done like a small guides tournament on Sunday. We're not going to do that this year. We're going to do the poker tournament the night after instead. I'll be honest with you guys, that event is a big undertaking. It's like herding cats with ropes. And we've done the guides tournament the first 3 years, and this is purely a me decision. It's not because of any other reason other than, man, I'm worn out. Like by the time we get to Saturday night and that's over with, like I'm worn out, and I kind of want to relax. And having to get up and go fishing at 6 a.m. the next morning, after all that, when I got to go back to guiding on Monday morning, I just kind of want a day off. That was me. Like I'm just getting old, I guess. I want a day off there. There we go. Rocky Shoe, yeah, y'all won last year. That's right. I forgot about that. Y'all sure did win last year. That's right. Guys, I think we're going to wrap it up, man. Good discussion tonight. We've got to get this cheating. It's just the cheating has become so pervasive in some of this stuff. We've got to get that under control. I love this sport. I love bass fishing. It's not like I'm disappointed in it. I still love bass fishing. So don't take any of this conversation to think that I'm not a fan of Major League Fishing Bass Pro Tour or a fan of Bassmaster Elite Series. But when things are wrong, if we don't discuss them and call them out for what they are, if we just pretend they don't exist, they're only going to get worse. So I think it's important that we have these discussions, and we just had one tonight. So you guys do me a favor and share this thing and get it out there and let some more people hear this discussion, and hopefully we can get these things fixed, and bass fishing will be better for it, man. Appreciate every one of you guys watching. As always, we're actually going to go live Monday through Thursday every night. 4 nights in a row we're going live this week. We're trying something new in content delivery. We'll be live over on Facebook tomorrow evening on the Billy Lawson Lake Fork Guide Facebook page. We'll be right back here on Wednesday night and then live on Facebook Thursday. That is the plan. Appreciate you guys as always. We'll see you next time right here on your Lake Fork Guide.